Welcome back to Becoming a Published Author is Fun. And if that doesn't make any sense to you, then I suggest you go back and look at my episode 8 where I explain what that means. But today we are in episode 22 and we're continuing in our character building. We've been looking at viewpoint. Now we're shifting to the character itself. Character building. And this is an important aspect of your writing. You want your readers to identify with your characters. I believe that I've told you in the past that in one of my books, I actually asked different readers who their favorite character was. And I had in my own mind an idea who that would be. Well, it turned out to be, it wasn't a who, it was whose. There was more than one. My mother-in-law had one I hadn't even considered. I had one that I thought of that she might like, but she liked somebody else. And it wasn't because I failed in one area, it was because she identified more with that character. And so I want to just touch on this a little bit today. We're going to talk about becoming the character. Now, you might hear me talk about that every once in a while, about becoming the character, because that is what I do. And nowadays, it kind of comes naturally to me. Not so sure that was true at the beginning. I think I had to work hard at it, actually, to be honest with you. But when I say become the character, you're always going to be the author, no matter what your viewpoint is. You're the author, so you're behind. You're off stage, so to speak. So people can't see you or even hear you. But your influence will always be there as the author. That said, you, the author, want to become that character. Because it's, as you write it and you become that character, it will just sort of take over the story in a sense. And that character will become more and more believable. Now, I'm not just talking about one character. When you first start out, you may only have one character. That would be your primary character. But as you develop your skills, you can expand it to your antagonist. You can expand it to other supporting characters to some degree. But the one that you primarily want to identify with is your hero, the primary character. And some of the ways in which you want to do that with is how they think. You want to think like your character thinks. And so as you build your character and you develop their thought patterns, which, by the way, if you're using first person or third, either way, you will be conveying to your reader what those thoughts are. And so you want to be able to think like your character does. The moment you diverge from them, there's going to be a jarring moment because the reader might very well detect that. So you want your thoughts to be their character's thoughts. You have to be, I think they use this term in acting, in character. You play that part. You learn who that character is. And since you're the creator of that character, that shouldn't be too hard for you. But you want to think like your character does. You also want to talk like your character. I'll get into that in a moment, a little bit more detail on it. But you want each character will have his or her own characteristics. And so, and by the way, just because you're a male author doesn't mean you can't be in that female character. Or you're a female author that you can't be in that male character. You're identifying with him. And so it's a little bit more difficult because you're crossing genders there, but you can do it because you know who your character is, the character's characteristics, their attitudes, their their history. Hopefully, you've got all that written down somewhere, not just in your mind, preferably in a document somewhere, so that you can think like that character and talk like that character and walk. Now, when I say walk, I'm not talking about two little feet walking along the ground. I am talking about, uh, in the Bible, the term walk refers to their conversation, to their lifestyle. And that's what you need to know. You need to know your character is thinking, talking, and walking. And if you can get into that and convey that to the reader, now you have a winning proposition. So I have on here make them believable. To be believable, we have to work at in a speech. Now, I talked about talk, so this is where I get into talking. Some people, some authors will try to use accents, speech accents. I would offer a word of caution here, is because when you get into accents, geographically speaking, just shrinks down your area. People outside that geographical area may not have the slightest clue as to what you mean if you're using localized speech or accents or even particular words. So you got to be careful on that. I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm just saying you have to be careful. Don't be too, I think the word is idiomatic, because you want for instance, your character's from Georgia, and I don't know how true this is, but I had a cousin who visited Georgia, and she came back and gave an imitation of what she thought a Georgian talked like. She said, I pulled into the gas station, and the man walked up to her and said, "You all want some oil?" Now, to us, it sounds like oil and all came out sounding the same way. To somebody in Georgia, they would have known exactly what he was saying. But again, see how localized that was? We were living in Michigan, and until my cousin came and shared that with us, we didn't know that it was that significant or that descriptive. And so you have to be, again, be careful on that. You don't want to overdo it, but to some degree, it may be a good thing to do. Now, me, I don't ever do that, and I may have a word or two that, and we'll get into that in a moment, that identifies that character, but not. I don't try to do accents. Now, I do, as I said, I do a word or a phrase. In some of my characters, they will have a phrase that they repeat over and over and over again. And so that becomes identifiable with them. And so that's a good thing to do. If you can get a word or a phrase in which people identify with that character, that is a good point to have. Stuttering. In my book, Perish, the World That Was, the very first book of the World That Was series, I had the serpent in Garden of Eden stuttering. And then when Satan took him over, the stuttering stopped. So it was a significant shift there that was brought out in the story. Eve picked up on the change. She didn't pick up on why the change took place. So that was in the story. That was fictional. There's nothing in the Bible that says he stuttered. Nothing in the Bible that says that there was anything like that. But I used my imagination, and I gave him a characteristic of a stutter. You want to be, so that's the stutter. We have a phrase. And you have in this case, it's an identifiable uh, word, and it goes with the phrase, but I'm just using it as an example, stutter. Now, when you're putting this all together, you want to be consistent. Now, I don't know if I've said it in this series or another series that I've done, but I mentioned a story about a man who reviewed one of my books. And that man, uh, uh, although he was a Christian, I think he may have been a new Christian, didn't know his Bible very well. But in any case, he misunderstood something early on in the story, disagreed with it. Although that portion was taken from the Bible itself, not in entirety, but to some degree. It was consistent with the scriptures, let's put it that way. And he disagreed with something. I didn't think that was appropriate, and so on and so forth. Well, because he took that attitude, he started skipping through the book. And by skipping through the book, he basically what he did was he missed things. Because back in those days, there were a lot of people with the same name. There was Methuselah, and there was another man with the same name. And I think his spelling was even the same there. There was more than one Enoch. There was one. You had different two characters. One was in the godly line, and one was in the ungodly line. If you want to look at it that way, they had the same name, the same spelling, totally different personalities. So he skipped over, and he missed that. He missed the fact that I put, because of that, I spotted that right away, knew that was going to be a problem, and I put the necessary information in there so that the reader would know that this is a different person, what line he was in, and so forth. Well, he skipped, and he missed that important information, and he made a judgment that was wrong, but he made a judgment. Well, that comes down to consistency. Be consistent. You don't want your reader to... Now, if they skip around like this guy did, their chances of making a mistake are pretty good. But assuming you're dealing with a reader who actually reads the book through, you don't want to confuse them. You want consistency. So in the case of the snake with his stuttering, that was consistent all the way through that particular story. And then when Satan took him over, that stuttering disappeared. And again, the explanation is found in the context of the book. And so the thing is that you can't, that's consistent. If you're going to make a change, you want to make sure that the reader understands that this is a part of the story, and that this is not something to be ignored or be alarmed at, but you just take note of it. There's been a change here, and you if you're reading it through like you're supposed to, you will be aware of why that change took place. You want to be consistent. So that is what we're talking about today. Primarily being consistent. Become your character. And you can have multiple... nowadays, every character I develop, I get into some degree. Primary character, I get into big time. And that character takes over the story to an extent. Now, as an author, sometimes you have to stop and say, whoops, do I want this to go that way or not? You have to assert your authority. And maybe you might have to say, okay, so then you got to go back and do some editing so that character, choices that the character made perhaps earlier, might have to be changed or eliminated altogether. But the thing is this, you become that character. You think like them, you talk like them, you walk or act like them. And that will really convey, because as you're writing your story out, that character is going to come alive. And that's what you want. You want your character, especially your prime character, to come alive. One of the best compliments I have ever received was from a reader who reviewed my book, and she said that he brings the Bible alive. Now, I don't know her personally. I don't know how much in the Bible she was, but she was obviously in the Bible to some degree. I could tell that. But what she said was that there were some areas that maybe in her reading of the Bible that were difficult for her to work around, to comprehend, and so when I brought the character alive, it brought the Bible truth alive to her, and now I took that as a major compliment that I was able to do that. And I had no idea about her other than the fact that she reviewed books, and she reviewed mine. I believe she gave me a 5. Either a 4 or 5. I think it was a 5. The other thing is you can use accents. You can use, even like a person tends to slur their speech or anything like this. You can use them. Just be cautious. Don't overuse them, but don't underuse them either. If it's part of their character, like a stutter, that's going to be something that's going to show up on a regular basis. Maybe a more memorable phrase or something of that nature, that is a good thing. If you can come up with a phrase in which that person uses frequently and can be made identifiable with that character, that's a very strong point. You see it in movies all the time, and you could see it in some books, and that's something I would encourage you to do. Stuttering is just one example of that. But be consistent, whatever you do. So that's today's episode, and I will see you in the next episode.